and welcome to today's video. This time we're going to be looking at an article concerning art and how a Danish artist who was given money to create a piece of work created a controversy when he decided to keep the money and run. So let's have a look at it together. And don't forget, if you want to go over some of the words yourself later, you can download the text in the video description below. And also you can skip to each word, which is marked as a chapter in the video description. So let's begin with the first paragraph. A Danish artist who was given 500,000 kroner, about $72,000 by the Kunstmuseum, to create a work of art has been ordered to pay the money back after he failed to deliver the promised artwork. Instead, he pocketed the cash and titled his project, "Take the Money and Run." Jens Hanning, who is known for his provocative and controversial works, received the grant in 2019 to create a piece that would highlight the low wages of migrant workers in Denmark. So let's kick off with the first word we have here. It's the phrasal verb to pay back. And we can see this is also what we call a separable phrasal verb because we put the object here, the money, in between the verb and the particle. In fact, with separable phrasal verbs, you have two options. You can put it between, like this, or you can put it after the particle. So you can equally say, pay the money back or pay back the money. Both of them are equally valid. However, if you use a pronoun, don't forget to put it in the middle always. So you pay it back. So what does it mean? Well, it is connected with money. Obviously, the verb pay is connected with money, but the real meaning here is to return money that you have been lent. That's the point. So imagine that I want to buy a new car and I don't have enough cash. So I can go to the bank and I can ask for a loan, some credit. The bank lends me that money and I have to pay it back over the course of the following weeks or days or months, usually with some level of interest that I also have to pay back. So that is what happened here, right? And because he failed to give them the artwork that he had promised, they demanded, or they ordered him, they gave him instructions to pay it back. So let's move on to the next word. This word is pocketed. Now you may be familiar with the word pocket. It is an object. It's something that many people have on their clothes. Usually in their trousers or in their jackets, you have pockets, and we use pockets for keeping things. I typically keep my keys and my coins and my wallet in my pockets. Maybe you didn't know that we can also use this noun as a verb. This is quite a common feature of English. If we take a noun like water, we can also use that as a verb. You can water your plants, meaning that you give them water in order to keep them alive. Milk is also a verb, right? We know what milk is. It's something we drink. But did you know that it's also a verb to extract the milk from the animal, from the cow or from the goat? You milk it. So in this case, similarly, pocket, the noun, is used as a verb, and it simply means to put something in your pocket or to keep it. So in this case, he has pocketed the cash. He's kept the cash for himself. So let's move on to the third word. This is an adjective. It's provocative. The verb is to provoke. If we provoke somebody, it means that we do something or say something that is designed to elicit a response or a reaction. Okay? And if we use provocative to describe something, usually it is designed in such a way that it will cause a reaction, an emotional response, if you like, or it will at least cause people to have very strong opinions about it. So if we talk about a provocative work of art, that means there's something about it that is going to cause you to feel an emotion. If it's provocative, it's usually quite negative. So usually people get angry about it. in that way. So he has obviously form on this artist, Jens Hanning. He has previously produced other works of art that were provocative, like this one, and controversial. Moving on to the last word in this paragraph, we have grant. Now we can see this is a noun because we use it with the definite article, but we also can use this word as a verb, to grant somebody something. So this essentially means to give or to provide them with something. An example could be people who are fleeing a country, they're running away because of a conflict. They often apply for asylum in another country. That's the right to stay as refugees. And the government has to decide if they're going to grant them asylum, if they're going to give them that right. We can also talk about granting a wish. In the classic tale where somebody finds a magic lantern and they rub the lamp and out comes the genie and he grants them 3 wishes, provides them with the possibility of wishing for 3 things. In this case, obviously, using it as a noun is very closely related to that, but it's always about money. When we talk of a grant, if the government provides you with a grant, that means they're giving you some money in order to study or to do some concrete particular thing. In this case, the museum gave the grant to this artist in order to produce a work of art. Finally, we do use this word in an expression, very common expression actually, to take something for granted. This is often used when we fail to appreciate the true value of somebody or something. Now, it's not necessarily a monetary value, of course. It could simply be that we've become so used to this person or so used to this object that we don't appreciate it anymore. So, I don't know, let's imagine that every day I drive to work. Okay, so I'm very, very used to driving to work. Now, the day that my car breaks down, that is when suddenly my daily routine is turned upside down. Okay, I have to find another way of getting to work while my car is being repaired. So it's in that moment that I really appreciate the value of the car to me. Previously, I took it for granted. I didn't appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on to the next paragraph. However, when the museum contacted him to check on the progress of the project, he informed them that there was no artwork and that he had used the money for his own purposes. He said that his act of taking the money was itself a work of art that exposed the unequal distribution of wealth in society. The museum was not amused by his explanation and demanded that he return the money or face legal action. They argued that he had breached the contract and that his act was not a work of art, but a fraud. So the first word we have here is wealth. Now you may notice that it looks quite similar to another English word, which is health. But in fact, it's not really connected with that. This is connected with money, with possessions, I suppose. Basically, your wealth is your value, your worth, your monetary value. So it's not only money or cash, it can also be assets that you own, like cars or houses or expensive paintings if you're very rich. The adjective is wealthy. So a wealthy person is similar really to a rich or well-off person. And in this case, the purpose of the artwork that the artist was supposed to produce was to highlight the inequalities in society, the fact that some people are wealthier than others. There's an unequal distribution of wealth. Moving on to the next word, we have this adjective, amused. The verb is to amuse. So if we say that we are not amused, this basically means that we don't find a situation funny. It's not amusing. I'm not amused by this. There are two slightly different uses of the verb, though. One of them is to find something funny. So if somebody's telling me a joke that could amuse me, I could laugh, then it's amusing. But we also use it to mean to be occupied. So perhaps I think of a game to amuse the children during the holidays. That doesn't necessarily mean they're laughing, they're not finding it funny, but they're finding it entertaining and interesting. To keep somebody amused in that way, to keep them interested, to keep them occupied. So the next word we have here is breach here. They argued they had breached the contract. So breach is very closely etymologically related to break. That is essentially what it means here. If you breached your contract, that means you haven't followed the terms specified in the contract. You've broken that agreement. So you can breach an agreement, you can breach a contract. You can also talk about a security breach. In computing, if a hacker enters the network of a big organization, then this would be a very serious security breach. The hacker has broken in to the network. So the last word we have here is the noun fraud. And if we talk about fraud, we're essentially talking about a kind of crime, usually a financial crime. So it involves money. There is some element of dishonesty here. If somebody's stealing money from their employer, perhaps, or if they are changing the numbers of the accounts in a way that deceives the government or the authorities, then that also would be a fraud. In this case, obviously, the fraud is that the artist has taken this grant, this large amount of money, and they have not produced the artwork that they promised. So this would be considered a fraud, that they were not acting in an honest way. Let's move on to the next and final paragraph. Hanning defended his project and said that he had fulfilled the contract by creating a work that addressed the issue of low wages and that he had generated a lot of public debate and media attention, which was one of the goals of the museum. The museum said that they had given Hanning several opportunities to resolve the matter, but he had refused to cooperate, and they had no choice but to take legal action against him. We're very disappointed and angry. We think he has acted irresponsibly and unethically, said Anna Johansson, a spokesperson for the agency. So the first word we have here is wages. Wages is a noun. And basically, when we talk of wages, we talk of the money that we earn when we work, right? So there is another word in English which you will often hear in this context, and that is salary. The difference is fairly subtle, but a salary is usually given as an annual amount, so the total amount you would earn during a year, whereas wages are usually given or expressed as the amount you earn per hour. So if you work in McDonald's, for example, you are going to earn a wage, an hourly rate. Whereas if you're an architect, you will normally talk about your income in terms of your salary. That's the yearly amount that you earn gross. So wages are commonly associated with relatively low paid jobs. And that was the issue here that was supposed to be highlighted by this work of art. Moving on to the second word here, we have the verb to refuse. So if I refuse to do something, somebody refuses to do something, that means I'm essentially saying no to a request. So somebody is asking me to do something, to do an action, and I'm saying, no, I won't do it. So I'm refusing to do that. And essentially that's what happened here, right? He has refused to return the money, to pay it back. They've asked him to do that and he has rejected their request. He's refused to do it. It can also mean that somebody is showing opposition to a particular action or a lack of compliance. So, for example, a child will often refuse to eat their vegetables, even though the parents beg them to. Perhaps in a work environment, the workers are refusing to accept a new contract, and that might lead to some industrial action, like a strike. The last point I'd like to make about this word is that you have to be a little careful because you might come across it, you might find it in a different form, because sometimes we talk about refuse. Instead of to refuse, it's pronounced refuse with the stress on the first syllable. And this is actually a noun. When we talk about refuse, we're essentially talking about waste or rubbish or garbage, as Americans say, things that are left over and of no use. So be careful, because it is spelled exactly the same way, but as I said, it's pronounced differently and it's a different part of speech. It's a noun instead of a verb. So let's move on to the penultimate word, disappointed. So this is an adjective. It's an adjective to describe your emotional state. If you are very disappointed, that is a negative feeling. And essentially, it's something we feel often in situations where we expect something to be good, to be positive, but in reality, that thing is less than we expected. So it is disappointing, and we are disappointed. Notice the difference there. There's a lot of adjectives like that end in ed or ing. Ed generally refers to your feeling about the situation, and the ing adjective would refer to the situation that creates the feeling. So the same would be true with I am excited about a particular occasion, and that occasion or that activity would be exciting. So in this case, the article is saying that the museum were very disappointed with this whole event. It is much less than they expected. They didn't expect this artist to run away with the money, essentially, and not give them a work of art. And his action fell below the standards that they expected. So they were disappointed with him. They also say, moving on to the last word, that he acted irresponsibly. So an irresponsible person, so irresponsible is the adjective and irresponsibly is the adverb. An irresponsible person is somebody who behaves in a way that is not, let's say, equal to their status. So if you are a parent, if you have children, you should do everything in your power to look after them, right? And you should keep them away from danger. If you don't do that, then most people would say those parents are acting irresponsibly. They are setting a bad example for their children. So it's connected with your sense of duty, I suppose. If you are a responsible person, then you do all of your duties, you do the things that you should do, and you do them well. And if we add the prefix ir, then we get the opposite. You are irresponsible. Obviously, people generally don't trust people who act irresponsibly a lot of the time, because you can't really rely on them. You never know what they're going to do. Generally, people are more irresponsible when they're young, right? If you're a teenager, you may go out and drink too much or take drugs, do things that are a little dangerous because you don't really think of the consequences. That's why you act in an irresponsible way. So that brings us to the end of today's article. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you maybe have learned a few words. And I hope to see you next time we look at another article. Please subscribe now to get notified when I post it. Thank you and goodbye.